From Social Prosperity Partners, this is Community Catalysts.
I can't change the world. I can't change the things that are going on in our country and the rest of the world, but I can try to change my little pocket and try to create a little utopia here in Fallbrook.
Welcome to Community Catalysts. I'm your host, Matt Lehrman. If you serve your community in any leadership role, you already know the work asks a great deal of you. The responsibility is real, expectations are high, and the path forward is rarely simple. This podcast exists for those moments. It's a place to slow down, reflect with openness, and learn from leaders who are navigating complexity while the stakes are still very real. My guest today brings a community leadership perspective shaped by decades of hands-on service across education, nonprofit leadership, and local governance. Tauna Rodarte is a Clerk trustee with the Fallbrook Union High School District, serving a rural, largely low-income community in Southern California. Alongside her elected role, she spent 15 years leading a volunteer-driven nonprofit supporting children, military families, and people experiencing homelessness, mobilizing partnerships to turn limited resources into meaningful impact. Tauna Rodarte, welcome to Community Catalysts.
Matt, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me here today.
I'm thrilled to talk to you. Hey, Tauna, before we talk about roles and titles, help us meet you where you serve. You've lived and worked in Fallbrook for a long time. What would be useful for our listeners to understand about the community itself, its strengths, its struggles, its beauty, and what makes it home for you?
Fallbrook is definitely a very unique community. We sit just east of Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, the largest Marine Corps base in the United States. So we have a lot of military families, and part of my district is actually on the base. We are also very agricultural because we are considered coastal highlands. So we have a large number of migrant farm workers that work these farms. A lot of them may be legal, may not have legal status. And so we deal with a lot of that. We are also kind of lush because we live in that sweet spot up in the hills. We're small. We're about 35,000 people. And as you mentioned, a lot of our students are low income and immigrant families. But part of what brought us here was just the beauty of the community and the wonderfulness of the people.
You know, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. So from our perspective, San Diego and that whole area of Southern California, that's heaven, especially in the summer.
Oh, it is. Absolutely. And we sit about 10 degrees cooler than most of the rest of San Diego, and to the north of us, Temecula, which we love, which is part of why we grow. We are known as the avocado capital of the world. And every April, we have a large community festival called the Avocado Festival in April. It's every April. And we get about 150,000 people in our little main avenue, which is a really great way to show off our small town.
Oh, okay. Now I need to know to get there in time for that. So, Tauna, for more than 15 years, you served as executive director of Outreach Impacting Lives, which I understand is a volunteer-run nonprofit supporting children in need, military families, and people experiencing homelessness. What first pulled you toward that kind of hands-on, sustained service, and what made you sustain it for so long?
A couple of things. One, the organization was actually founded by the owner of the company I was working for, which was a commercial flooring company. I was in that industry for about 15 years. I did a lot of pretty much every high rise in downtown San Diego, every hornblower ship, most of the museums in Balboa Park. So I was very blessed to have a very interesting and fruitful career. But our owner was very community minded and wanted to found Outreach, which was originally an in-house committee just to do good, to give some money to local charities. And I had spent previously to that about 20 years in the nonprofit industry. And he and I in conversation discussed, and I said, if you really want to accomplish the things you want to do, we need to become a 501c3 nonprofit. So I went through that process with Outreach, and we did do that. And so it was really, again, a combination of my background and having done that previously, everything I had done before including Junior League, Bar Association Auxiliary, PTA, things like that, all related around children. And that was really my primary focus. And then second, the fact that I was able to do this in conjunction with my work, which allowed me to have access to a lot of clients in the community, architects, design firms, in that kind of industry, builders. And so they helped support us. And in our 15 years that I was with it, we did about $1.5 million worth of work, 100% volunteer. We had an operating budget of about $100,000 a year, got almost everything donated. It was just a wonderful experience.
Tell me a bit about the community needs that you were recognizing and responding to. What was it that you and the founder from the company could look at and say, someone needs to step in and fix that?
Yeah, I would say it was really threefold. One was we had just started the wars, so Iran, Afghanistan. And so families that are E5 in the military are considered below income level, national income minimum levels. So they're considered in the poverty range. So one of the first projects we did is every Thanksgiving, we put together about a $50 meal, had about 10 items, including a large turkey. And we would work with, we always worked with partners. That was one of our key. We're not the front line. We knew we were volunteers. So the group we partnered with was called Military Outreach Ministry. And they would then work with the various military staff, Navy and Marine Corps, and identify families in need. Maybe one of the husband came back and lost his legs and it was hospitalized. Maybe it could be both parents are in the military and they were living with grandparents. So that was one of probably our most wonderful experiences, meeting these families one-on-one. And one of the policies we had is that when they walked away, they were not allowed to carry the bags and the turkey. That was literally our service to them, was that we carried it to their cars, that we wanted to thank them for sacrificing their lives, their family time together, their futures potentially. And our gift to them was that we would not let them. And you would get these giant Marines and they want to pick up the turkey. And we have photos of little 4-year-olds holding on to a turkey, walking it out to a car. So that was just a wonderful experience. The second one is there was a rise in homelessness. And we realized this and we wanted to do our part. And again, as volunteers, there's only so much you can do. We partnered with probably 20 different homeless organizations, some through the military, because about 30% of homeless are veterans. And then we partnered with other homeless organizations and we put together backpacks every year with personal hygiene supplies. So they would have soap, deodorant, things like that. So just again, to remind them they're human beings. And even though they're on the streets, there are people that think of them, that care for them. And then the third one was the other backpacks we did were school supply backpacks. And we worked with foster organizations, orphanages in Mexico, with nonprofit organizations, refugee groups, and give them these free $50 value backpacks so they could start the year with a brand new backpack and all the supplies. So those were the three biggest needs we saw in our community at the time.
Go back to talking about the Thanksgiving for a second. When you were talking about it, I could hear it in your voice. Even today, that's still emotionally resonant for you, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And I can share one particular experience. A young mother came, we were wrapping up our time frame, and a young mother pulled her baby, maybe a year old, out of the car seat and came up. As I walked back to the car with the supplies, and I may break down in tears. I'm very emotional. And she literally said, "My husband is deployed. I don't know where he is because of confidentiality. I don't know if he's in Iraq. I don't know if he's in Afghanistan. I haven't talked to him in weeks." She goes, "Our baby was mortally sick and has been hospitalized for 3 weeks. And the fact that I could come," and she goes, "I just picked up my baby from the hospital and I could come and I have a full Thanksgiving meal and I don't need to run to the store and I can be home and celebrate that." Literally the two of us just in tears. I mean, that's the kind of impact that we were doing.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you is that it's not just the cause that motivated you, it's the impact. You understood what it means to have impact as a result of the mission work, as a result of the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. For me, it really does feel, some people could call it a religious calling. For me, it does feel like a calling that, I have felt since I was a young child that there's more to life than just being, that I had a purpose for being here, and for me, I found that purpose young as a teenager. Actually, one of my first jobs was working at my local high school during the summer we were in a very agricultural community in northern Utah, and we had a large migrant population. So we had a migrant school for them. We taught them how to swim. I got involved in ballet folklorico and dance ballet folklorico all through high school. And so for me, being a volunteer is just part of who I am. And it's just my identity. And when you talked about Fallbrook and how charming it is, I read yesterday in The Guardian, and I don't remember the name of the author, but he referred to people that literally are trying to create micro utopias. And that's how I feel about where I live, that everything that I'm doing is to either benefit the children here in Fallbrook or our neighboring community, Bonzel, where my husband happens to be a teacher, which is a much smaller community, also lots of groweries. And I can't change the world. I can't change the things that are going on in our country and the rest of the world, but I can try to change my little pocket and try to create a little utopia here in Fallbrook.
Let's talk about that. So after decades of nonprofit and volunteer leadership, you recently stepped into elected service. And now you've been a trustee on the Fallbrook Union High School District Board for 2 years. Am I right about that?
Actually, about 2.5 years, yeah.
2.5 years, and you currently serve as a clerk trustee. So first off, you have to explain to me what a clerk trustee is.
So basically, as the clerk, I am responsible for signing all of our legal documentations. So whatever the board votes on during our public meetings, or if there's things that involve employees or student discipline that are handled in closed session, all of those have to be signed by the board president, the superintendent, and the clerk.
So what was happening, Tauna, in the district or in the community that made running for the school board feel necessary?
Let me back up just a bit. I always wanted to be a politician. I went to university and studied political science for 2 years. And I was raised in the Mormon faith, and you're encouraged to get married young. And I met my first husband and got married and dropped out of school and had 5 children and was busy raising my children while still doing community service the entire time. After leaving that marriage, my children are all now grown. My youngest is 25 and just graduated from UCSD and is planning on becoming a teacher. So for me, what happened was I left my place of employment post-COVID. The construction industry didn't quite come back. My client base was having a lot of empty buildings, not getting as many tourists coming. I did a lot of high-end hotels. And so I had the opportunity for an early buyout. I'd had some medical issues. So we went ahead and said, let's go for it. So I retired at 53. And the dream had always been, once I'm retired, I am full-time, getting involved in politics, community service. And to the point I did the math, it was 120 hours a week. At which point my husband reminded me, you're supposed to be retired, not working twice as much as you did before. So my first attempt at running for politics actually happened for the planning group. I had been elected previously in another community to the community council. So I figured it was very similar. It was the eve of the day to sign up. And I got an email from my political party, and I leaned to my husband. I said, we've talked about it. Are you okay for me going for it? And he's like, whatever you want to do. So I went to the registrar of voters the next day, signed up, ran for planning group, did not win. But it was a good learning experience for me. I learned what the political environment is like. I learned what our community environment is like politically. And so the following year, there had been, with one of the positions at the high school board, a recall. And they had tried to appoint a person That person had been recalled, and the county called for a special election in 2023. And the only election that year was literally for this high school seat. I happened to have been at a community meeting involving the elementary school district. They were searching for a new superintendent. And so this community group, there was about 30 of us at our community library. And we got the word that the person recalled did not want to go through this process again. He was an elderly gentleman, and he's like, just don't want to deal with this.
He was done.
He was done. And I snarkily, because I can be kind of snarky at times, went, well, too bad I'm not in that area. Otherwise, I would run. And about 2 minutes later, somebody came over with the map and held it up to me and went, that is your area. And I went, oh, I guess I'm running for school board. And I think for me, it wasn't one specific item. My youngest daughter did graduate from Fallbrook High School. So I was very familiar with the school, but it had been several years before. She graduated in 2018 and was in college at the time. For me, it was more, we had witnessed what school board meetings were like at the time, and the screaming and the yelling and having to have sheriffs and having to have protection for board members. And for me, one of my primary goals was what I call good governance. We need to get back to good governance where we're polite to one another. If we want to be a civilized society, we have to learn to be civil with one another. And that was one of my key points. I have wonderful neighbors, regardless of political parties, regardless of religion. We need to remember that about each other, that we care for each other. And that was my primary reason.
I want to talk about what it was like to serve on the board. But before I get to that, I want to contrast. In your nonprofit world, we've already talked about you were all about impact, hands-on involvement, and direct connection from the mission that you were there to actually delivering services to people.
Yes.
What was it like for you to take a seat on an elected school board where your job was 100% governance and 0% impact and output?
Yes. It was a bit of a challenge. I will freely admit that. It is to a large extent a ceremonial position. You know, we are there at graduations in our robes and, you know, handing out the certificates and posing for photos. During awards, scholarship nights, we hand them out. So you are correct. I didn't have that one-on-one with a lot of the students, but our district and our superintendent in particular is very much hands-on and very much being in the community and stepping away from the board is sacred. They only show up once a month to the board meetings. They only show up twice a year to these official events. Come to the ballet folklorico performance. Come to the choir performance. We have 3 high schools. We have a traditional high school, Fallbrook High School. We have Oasis, which is a continuation high school for students that need a little bit of a different environment for different reasons. Some of them may just not fit in a traditional high school. Some of them are semi-professional, whether they're actors, singers, musicians, athletes, so they can do their schooling at their pace and expedite getting their high school degree. A lot of them go to college at the same time and graduate with an AA and their high school diploma at the same time. And then our third high school is a strictly online high school. So part of what I have done is I go to the actual events. So, for example, Oasis has quarterly awards for their students for attendance, those that achieved 3.5 and above. I regularly go to the Student of the Month awards and try to get to know the students a little bit and the parents. That's the key as well.
Tauna, I wonder if I could ask you to explain to people who are listening how you understand the division of responsibilities between being an elected leader and being what in most districts would be the staff and the staff's responsibility under a school superintendent to do the actual work of educating. And the reason I bring it up is it's often a question that I get asked when I do orientations for new electeds to help people understand what doesn't seem intuitively true, that the electeds are responsible for answering the questions of what do we want as our districts, as our community's long-term outcomes, but it's the staff that owns all the questions that begin with how. How do we do that? How are we prioritizing in our budget? How are we spending money to do these things? Which decisions we're making? That there's a division here. You being such a hands-on leader, how did you come to understand that? And what advice do you have for other community leaders to understand that separation of responsibilities?
Absolutely. No, it's a great question because there is a lot of confusion about that. Going back to the school board is not in charge of what textbooks are being evaluated for various classrooms. The school board does not decide every single book that is in the library. That is a staff responsibility. One of the advice that I would give is I took a course through the California School Boards Association called a Master's in Governance Certificate. So I earned that. It's a pretty intensive program. It's 6 sessions that are 2 8-hour days each. And they cover one day is finance, one day is community, one day is, something to that effect. School boards, what legal responsibility, what the school boards have are, 1, we hire, we supervise, and we fire the superintendent. That is our only employee. That is the only employee that we have direct responsibility over. Every other employee falls under under the superintendent. In our case, it's a woman, under the superintendent's purview. Obviously, if we need a new principal, that's going to get routed to us for information's sake. And we may, as a board, then discuss these are key things we are looking for in our next superintendent. We're not going to make that decision at that point, but we're going to put the information we want. For example, we have a very large Spanish-speaking community. That was very important to the board that hired our previous superintendent, who is bilingual. So that was a very important key for us to have. She was a first-generation Mexican-American woman. We wanted somebody who had that experience because so many of our students have that. So that's one of our responsibilities. The second one is we set the budget. We have to set a 3-year budget. We are required to have a certain amount of reserve funds, which get submitted to the county Office of Education. And they either come back and they say, nope, that's not going to work. You need to make some changes. Yes, this looks great. We give it an okay, or we recommend that you make a few changes. So in this case, they actually came back to us and said, as we know, budgets are tight. Make a few changes. We feel like you're being a little bit not as cautious as you normally are with the funding. Make some other assumptions, which we did. We still need to fall within that. And we submitted what's called interim 2 budget to the county. So the money is determined by us. Now, we don't determine every little thing. We have, for example, a furniture and supply line item. Let's say that line item is $500,000. We don't authorize every expenditure of that $500,000.
Right. You're not looking at which desks to buy or what sofas to buy.
Correct. The third part of it is that we are the official representation of the district. So therefore, anything that is formal is the board president or our superintendent in combination going to events. Other than that, everything else kind of runs itself.
Tauna, did you understand the separation of responsibilities when you first joined the school board? And was it ever frustrating to you being such a hands-on nonprofit leader to kind of say, there are limits on what I'm supposed to do here?
Yeah, it was a little frustrating because I thought perhaps they had a little more hands-on involvement and maybe went to each high school once a month and did a tour, let's say, or a class walk. They call them walkthroughs. And we don't do that. Now, we can at any time arrange to do that. I can call any one of the principals of our 3 high schools and say, hey, I would love to do a walkthrough of your school. What's a convenient day? I would love to come through and see the students. But we generally don't. We generally stay in our lane, but we do especially when invited by the principals. At that point, and there are special events, we do try to be there as much as we can to support them.
Tell me something from your nonprofit work that has been really useful to you in your governance work? What's an insight about the community or something that has really been special that you were able to bring to your governance work as a result?
I think one of the key things is a lot of the organizations I was involved with early, especially the Junior League of San Diego. So Junior League is a nationwide volunteer program. It was actually one of the founders was actually Eleanor Roosevelt. That's how old it is. And one of the things they do is they teach you how to govern boards. So we learned Robert's Rules of Orders, how you make motions, when you need a second, how you make amendments, how you do proper voting. One of the things I learned early in the various groups I was in is I try to avoid votes in situations that don't require it because I would rather be a consensus builder. I would rather than having, it be a 5-4 decision. I would rather be that 8 out of the people on the board are pretty much okay with it. Maybe one person on each end isn't okay with it. I'm more of a consensus builder. On the board, we have to have official votes, so everything is official. But knowing that process is something that made me very comfortable with the board process, where having witnessed some new members to school boards who may not have served previously on boards, that is a learning curve for them to really pick up. And I didn't. That was something I was instantaneously comfortable with.
The governing process was something that you were familiar with from your nonprofit work. I'll be interested. That's really interesting to me, but I was actually expecting you were going to answer it differently. So I'm going to tell you what I thought you were going to say. I thought that you were going to say that you came to the board with a deeper understanding of community need than other people who might still have wonderful intentions of service to the board, but you might have a more tangible understanding of what the needs are throughout the community, and perhaps an even greater way to understand the significance of the work of public education in your community. Have I just overstated, something?
No, I think I actually probably did. And when I met my fellow board members, so I was sworn in October 2023. When I met my fellow board members, which we are 4 of one party and 1 of another party, I instantaneously realized they knew our community inside and out as well for different reasons. Have grown up in Fallbrook, are graduates of Fallbrook. Fallbrook High School is the second oldest high school in San Diego County. We are more than 75 years old, and our building is showing it, or our buildings, we have a bunch of small buildings, is showing it. So I realized very quickly, I might have a lot of experience with nonprofit work, with children's needs in general, with some of the specialized community groups that I'm involved with besides being on the school board. But I didn't have the experience having lived here as a child and growing up and being a teen here and seeing that process. And so actually for me, it was a little bit humbling that, these are also people that know our community in a different way than I do. But I will say, since the time I got sworn in, and I'm not taking credit for me, taking credit for our board, every single vote during that time period has been unanimous, regardless of party. Every single vote we've taken. We have not had a single vote that was not unanimous.
It's a beautiful thing to be able to say that you joined an elected board and discovered that while people had different paths to get there and different experiences along the way, that there was a respect and a mutual appreciation for the perspectives that each member of the board brings to the deliberations.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a big part of it is I think there has been in the public's eye a bit of an effort to separate usness, our community, and they think this, they believe this, they want that, the us and the them. And for me, I come from a very varied background, having been raised in a very religious community, raising my own children in a very religious community for many years. Having been the daughter of an immigrant, I was raised bilingual. I know what the refugee process is like, having my mother having talked about it. My children are Hispanic, so I understand how racial issues might affect them. I have siblings that are gay and lesbian. So that for me is an important cause. And so I took kind of my wholeness, and as I campaigned and talked to people that were either my political party or not my political party, one of my key things is I'm just me. I am incapable of not being me. It's probably affected my career over the years at times because I don't fake things. I just can't. I'm authentically me, and I will authentically just share my story and tell what it's like. And so, having been, as an example, I had a woman who approached me who is very conservative, dropped out of college, had 3 children, and was very apologetic for not being, I guess, more polished or professional. And I looked at her and I went, I dropped out of college. I had 5 kids. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while. Why would you feel any less than that? What you're doing is the most important work of all, is raising your children and taking care of your home and your family. And why would anybody think less of you? I attempted to go back to college at one point, and I realized very quickly that I'm too much of a doer to sit in class and take notes. I learn on the job, and that's how I learn best. And I learned that about myself, and I'd rather be doing something than sit in class. Now, however, there are people who need to go to college for certain careers, for certain degrees. My husband is, as a teacher, has 2 master's degrees. My brother is an anesthesiologist. Obviously, he had to go to medical school. But there are many careers and many jobs where college isn't the right route. Again, I didn't go to college, and I was very successful in the sales world in commercial real estate. And so I was trying to reassert to her that you may be under the impression that people think negatively of you. That isn't the case, that we're more alike than we realize.
Tauna, I have one last question for you. For someone who's listening to this who feels called to serve, like you felt the calling, and that's whether in education or in nonprofit work or any form of local leadership, but if they feel tired or unsure or stretched thin or feeling like there's too much controversy going on, too many negative vibes coming out of it, what's the hard-earned wisdom that you would hope that they would take from your leadership journey?
A great question. Thank you. What I would say to them is that there are several steps they're going to have to take, and it's going to take some internal monologue and dialogue. One of them is you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to, again, like my daughter, hi guys, I'm here. You are going to have to approach people, whether you give them a phone call first, whether you email them, whether you just show up to a meeting. You are going to have to take a risk and put yourself out there. And that is uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I recognize that. I recognize that I'm very comfortable in settings with strangers, but I also recognize that I might be the exception to the rule. So they need to understand that. But what they also need to realize is the benefits of doing that outweigh it, because what they'll find is, so the second thing I would then say is they need to find what they love. So my passion for me has been children and has been trying to improve our community as much as I can with, limited time, limited finance, limited whatever. If I were Melinda Gates, I could be doing, other miraculous work in the world. But they need to find their own passion. So for somebody who is a gardener, go find your local garden club or your local eco-conservative conservation organization. If you are an animal lover, go to your local animal sanctuary or local animal shelter. Find out what your own passion is. If art is your passion, go find your where there's art classes, that kind of thing. So identify what it is you love doing. And then the third part is when you know who you are, what you like doing, when you are willing to take that risk and put yourself out there, the third part is you will reap the benefits. You will make friends. You might make lifelong friends. You will make acquaintances. You will enjoy your time with them together.
Tauna Rodarte, it has been really wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for being open to this conversation.
Well, thank you, Matt, for having me. It was really a pleasure to talk about the important work of helping our children in our country. And I appreciate the spotlight that you put out on it as well. Thanks so much.
Great visiting with you. My thanks again to Tauna Rodarte, Clerk Trustee to the Fallbrook Union High School District. Listening to Tauna, what stays with me is the depth of care that runs through every chapter of her leadership, from years of hands-on nonprofit service to the disciplined restraint required for governance. Her experience is a powerful reminder that effective leadership is not about doing everything yourself, but about knowing when to act, when to listen, and when to create the conditions for others to succeed, even when the work is hard, resources are limited, and appreciation is uneven. Hey, if this conversation sparked an idea, raised a question, or got you thinking about your own leadership, I'd love to hear from you. You're welcome to call me at 602-688-2724 and leave a short message. Tell me what you're noticing or what you'd like to hear explored next. I listen to every message, and your reflections genuinely help shape future episodes. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, you can now find my writing on Substack. The column is called Democracy Runs on Dialogue, and you'll find a direct link in the program notes. If you'd be open to sharing some of the hard-earned lessons from your own leadership journey, I also invite you to apply to be a guest. You'll find the podcast guest link in the show notes. Your story may help another leader see their own work a little more clearly. Community Catalysts is edited by Nick, Living the Dream Tantillo. Our executive producer is John Little. I'm Matt Lehrman of Social Prosperity Partners. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with another Community Catalyst.